Why are we giving in-state? This means that we are giving away UT, Texas A&M seats to illegals over people who are residents, and that was promoted and pushed through by a Republican governor.
Yeah, you're saying, well, but I don't have the answer. That's why you're here. I'm asking you.
I have business interests. It has to be. Why would Rick Perry do that? Other than there's businesses that promote that and want him to do that.
Thank you. Well, now, how should I refer to you? As Mr. General, Mr. Attorney General?
How about just Ken?
And where is it? I'm not going to do that. When is it?
The title, I'll tell you, the title is General, whatever your last name is. So every Attorney General is referred to as like General Paxton, General Marshall, whatever.
Okay, I will go with General Ken. And you are running for U.S. Senate against John Cornyn. The Republican primaries March 3rd, right?
March 3rd, and early voting starts 2 weeks from today on February 17th.
Starts 2 weeks from today. How are you feeling about the race?
I feel really good. I know we're up. John has spent almost $50 million up to now.
Really?
I've spent $2,600. The fundraising thing is the biggest scam that most Americans don't know about.
Yeah.
John McCain set up this bill, it was called McCain-Feingold, to get money out of politics. Well, it did, but only on the challenger side, because they have unlimited to $3,500 for the primary from anyone, which is really hard to raise enough money to put a commercial on TV at that level.
Right.
How do you raise $50 million at $3,500 if you're actually following the rules? Their rules are completely different than mine.
Well, the fact that it's even close at this point, let alone you being up, that's a good sign. And people can go and support you at Ken Paxton TX on X, kenpaxton.com. Let me first ask you, I know you were mentioning Tallarico. We'll get to that. The walkouts. Do you think that these are organic, or do you believe they're organized by outside groups? And if so, like, is there any evidence of it? Because I know we've all suspected that, and we've proven it in some past instances. But right now, what do you see?
I mean, I don't know, but my gut feeling is it's organized. It always is. It seems like in the end, we always find out it was organized by Soros or somebody like him, and it just doesn't seem like organic.
Yeah.
Why would a bunch of high school students walk out in Austin? A very liberal district, of course, but it just seems odd that they would all know to do that. It just seems very odd, unless it's organized.
Right. I do want to. So I want to, because you're Attorney General in Texas, but you're running for U.S. Senate. Let me ask you. This always is something that I'm curious about. What is it that you feel you can do or think you can accomplish there that you can't accomplish as effectively with your current job title? Because some people would say that seems like you have more sway.
So part of it is that I think I'm serving in my third term. That's 12 years. We've had 51 attorney generals. Only one other person has served for 3 terms. That's Greg Abbott. Mm-hmm. I think that staying in jobs too long, it ends up being not a good thing. And I just felt like I had a mission each time I ran for each term. First time was go after Obama and stop his federal overreach and really trying to ruin the Constitution and the country. Second time, I was going after big tech and big pharma and election integrity. That's why we didn't have the same problems as other states. Otherwise, we would have. And third time was to take on Joe Biden. I assume 107 times in 4 years. I didn't have the same mission, and I felt like we were really missing out. We've had the same senator for 24 years. No one's ever run for 5 terms. Not Sam Houston, not John Tower, not LBJ, not Phil Gramm. And it's so hard to beat these guys because they're so entrenched.
Yeah.
It's not like a regular incumbent like me. They have these fundraising limits that make it so hard. And if you don't have name ID in Texas, I felt like I was the only one that could eliminate a guy that had been wasting our time and voting against us and voting against Trump. And I was the only person who could actually take him on and win.
Well, and I want to ask you, because we just covered the 2 most important issues to Texans, and it seems to mirror the country at large. Immigration obviously is one, in the economy, and the economy in Texas has done pretty well compared to most states, and the country's doing better. But in Texas, we've all lived here for a while, and not to put you in the hot seat, but the H-1B situation in Texas. What can be done about that, and how much of this is above board? Because in doing some research for an investigative piece, finding out that College Station has more H-1B enrollees per worker than any other municipality, and I know it's primarily two companies like Cognizant and A&M. Some of us live in neighborhoods where we feel like strangers in our own neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. This is a federal program, so I mean, it's not something that I've had anything to do with,
right,
other than we are now investigating companies that we think are defrauding people that are not using it appropriately. So we can do that sort of under our consumer protections. Like if you're defrauding our people, it doesn't matter how you're doing it. I have the opportunity to go in, and so we're investigating certain companies, 3 of them right now, and our plan is, as we learn more about companies doing this. But you're right, because it's being sold one way, and I think some of these American jobs that teachers and science teachers and other jobs could be filled by Americans. It's supposed to be used for very high-level technical people, skilled workers that we can't get, that we need, and I think it's being way expanded. There's a Senator Schmidt from Missouri, who's going after. He's asking questions about this, and I think, given the opportunity, when I'm elected, this will be something I will be following up on as well at the federal level.
So, what do you think can be? So, nothing can be done on a state level, even dealing with these companies.
No, I'm pursuing those for fraud, for deceptive practices, but I can't stop the program at this level.
Right.
At the next level, at the Senate level, I can have a say in trying
the program itself.
Well, yeah, start asking questions, potentially change the program, at least start calling out and have an ability to actually do something about it.
Well, because I know, Texas is a red state, and I will tell you the general temperature on Governor Greg Abbott, by the way, is that first off, people are often shocked to find out he's a wheelchair guy. They didn't know it because it's not like FDR where he made it his calling. I remember the day he wheeled out, I was like, I had no idea this whole time. So that surprises people. But also, hey, it's mostly good, but there have been some missteps. I think property taxes are a big one in Texas that people feel are really high. They definitely are very high. And how the H-1B situation has happened this expansively, this rapidly. I mean, if you've been to a Costco anywhere in like the Dallas Metroplex area, Frisco, you've seen those videos, it looks like little Bangladesh.
No, I agree with both those issues. First of all, property taxes. I filed bills when I was in the Texas House and Senate to eliminate property taxes. We could do it if we wanted to. It's ridiculous that we have a Republican legislature and we can't get anything through that legislature. It is, in my opinion, has been the biggest problem in Texas because it makes it really difficult. You're renting your home from the government, and it's an uncontrollable cost. When you get a mortgage, you generally know what your cost is. Insurance has been fluctuating, but not to the level that property taxes. I moved into Austin, and in 4 years, my property taxes went from $1,000 a month to $3,000 a month. Well, my salary didn't go up at all. What am I supposed to do? We are captured by the government. We are renting, and if I don't pay that, the government takes my home. I don't think the government should be able to do that. We should be able to own our own homes at some point. And so there is a way to eliminate property taxes. I had a plan to do it, and if I had that opportunity, I would get it.
You say there's a way to eliminate it. Does that mean that we could eliminate it and we wouldn't have a revenue problem in the state? In other words, pragmatically, it can be done.
Yeah, and here's the plan. So it's a little bit sort of nuanced, but the comptroller of the state, before the legislature meets, within 30 days, has to tell us an estimate for the next 2 years, because we're not allowed to spend it. Unlike the federal government, we are confined by that number.
Right.
Well, guess what? The comptroller underestimates, because the last thing you want to do is overestimate the budget, because now you're into a 2-year cycle and you're stuck, right? So on average, the last study I saw, it may have changed a little bit, 11% is what the underestimate is. Well, so what the legislature does is they stick on riders at the end of, well, if we get this money, spend it here. If we get this money, spend it here. What my deal would be is, no, if we get this money, it goes to property tax relief. And over a 14 or 15 year period, you could eliminate school property taxes. And I would throw in a little kicker. Take 5% of that and give teacher pay raises. Because now you've got the teachers who are incentivized to come down and lobby for less spending, because the less we spend, the more money goes to teachers and the more money goes to property tax.
Well, actually, if anything, it would invert the incentive, because they would have an incentive right now to keep property taxes because they see
that's part of the problem, because typically the education establishment fights it because they're like, we're losing on this. Let's make it a winning issue for us. And let's put the Democrats in the box of having to vote against property tax cuts and teachers.
Yeah.
That's my idea.
But why hasn't it happened in Texas with a Republican governor and, like you said, a legislature? Like I'm sure you hear this from constituents. Like they kind of feel like that's a bit of a scam. Like, yeah, if we get other Republicans, because this has been here for a long time, it shouldn't be.
I am so frustrated with property taxes personally, because it was, when I went down there, it was one of my top 2 or 3 issues. And I kept filing these bills, and they wouldn't even get heard. This is a Republican leadership. But remember, we've had trouble in the Texas House particularly. I served under Joe Strauss. He was elected by, mostly Democrats, right? It was 11 Republicans that sided with the Democrats. Well, of course, he doesn't want property tax relief. The Democrats didn't want property tax relief. So I think the legislature has a responsibility to step up and stop giving us little tiny tax cuts that by the time they do the appraisal, they're gone. It's a joke.
Yeah. It's actually the kind of thing I think that actually factors in when people are leaving these blue states. Where do we want to move? Property taxes are what come up a lot. When I have people saying, hey, I'm leaving California or leaving Washington or Oregon, they go, but the property taxes in Texas are rough.
It is very rough. And if you compare us to other Republican states, particularly like Tennessee, they don't have a state income tax. And guess what? They have much lower property taxes. Most Republican states have lower property tax than us. Can you imagine what wealth we will create if we can stop? Because, if we can lower property taxes, the value of our homes are going up. Because now people have more money to put into their purchase, and we're gonna become wealthier if the government would stop stealing our money.
Well, I think we will. I think that the home prices need to regulate a little bit, and obviously with illegal immigration being dealt with, deportations. I think also people run into problems in Texas with, this brings us back to the H-1B situation. I mean, we've all seen it where you'll have 15 family members living in one house and buying up these houses, and then of course competing with these giant institutional investors. Like, there hasn't been enough building, and the market needs to recalibrate. The home values have skyrocketed in a way that's not sustainable, where people in the homes are happy, but you have a generation of people who are not able to buy homes now, even close to some of these major municipalities.
Look, I've got kids in their 20s. I've got a daughter who's a pediatric nurse. She was a pediatric nurse at Stanford. Her husband was a major in the Air Force. They're doing relatively well. Of course, they were living out in California. They could buy a house. Mm-hmm. That is insane. Yeah. When you've got two relatively high wage earners who cannot afford. But that is a function of a couple of things. Joe Biden's inflation, which drove up the cost of everything.
Yeah.
It also drove up interest rates. And so you get two big pieces: higher costs, because now houses are more expensive because of inflation to build.
Right.
And you got higher interest
also
rate.
Regulations, the regulatory regulations.
There's no doubt. And that's another thing that happened during the Biden administration that Trump's been better at dealing with. But he can't do it. It's going to take time to address the inflation that was created by Biden, because that was spending, and those trillions of dollars were spent.
Yeah.
And then the interest rates are unusually high for the situation we're in. Trump doesn't control those. Jerome Powell does, and he's hopefully going away.
Yeah. Well, we'll say we may be going out with a bang, too, the way that it's looking right now.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a whimper. Have you noticed, because you've been obviously in Texas politics for a while, and the Republican Party, the major shift when people talk about how young men are going right, it's that they're unapologetic. It used to be sort of like, well, hey, look, we need to deal with illegal immigration, but I think everyone who wants to come here legally. But now people are going, you know what? That system's been abused, and we need to be very selective. And they lean toward close the books until we figure it out. And a big part of that in Texas, you have young Republicans, young people looking to vote right, saying, hey, I think it's okay to culturally want Texas to feel like Texas, because there are neighborhoods that are unrecognizable and feel like a third world country now. And that's because the systems have been abused. They've forced Americans out of the labor force. And Texas really is one of, if not the worst offender in that with the H-1Bs.
Look, we look at Europe and what happened there, and the overrunning of England and France and Germany, and many of these countries have lost their identity. They're not German anymore. They're not right. French. They're not going to control. There's going to be a completely different cultural bent from there, and England's not going to be England. So, look, there's nothing wrong with people wanting to retain a certain value system and a certain, we're a Judeo-Christian country. That's how we were founded. There's nothing wrong with us wanting to retain that identity instead of saying, just let everybody come in here. We don't care. We don't have to be the same country. It really matters that we reflect the values of our founders, and we are a constitutional government that was formed with this idea that freedom of religion and this idea that could spread. You could promote your faith, and you could promote your political views. That was very important to the founders. So it's in the First Amendment.
Well, even in Texas, I would say this. Texas has been obviously pretty, I hate to use the term diverse, but you've had plenty of black Texans, you've had plenty of Hispanic Texans. There's been a raging demographic shift, though, to South Asian, Indian, people like that coming in here, where that is new, and it looks very different from the fabric of Texas. And culturally, there are neighborhoods where there just are incompatibilities. And then you look into these companies and go, oh, it's really just about replacing Americans for far cheaper. And then you have the placement agencies as well, where there are degree mills, there are people taking cuts off the top, skimming. Like it's something that I think the Republican Party is really gonna have to grapple with, because young people who are going to be voting for that party are going to say, yeah, but I also don't want my job sold out to a legal immigrant who's willing to do it cheaper, and a company with people in positions of power taking advantage.
Yeah, look, some of these jobs should be American jobs, and we need to do a better job. And that's why I like the fact that there is at least one senator asking the questions of this seems like it's gotten abused, where now We're bringing in people to take American jobs at lower pay who are willing to live in a house with 15 people. That's all wonderful, I guess, for them, but it's not good for Americans.
Why do you think Texas has become such a hotbed, though? Because really, it's places that you would expect, like Palo Alto, but you could definitely argue that Texas is worse in many respects. And certainly, why do you think Texas is such a hotbed for it?
It's simple. We're a very appealing state to come to, except for property taxes, because people know there are opportunities here. They know that there's freedom here. People are voting with their feet. Even people who can't vote are voting with their feet. People are moving to Texas. They're getting out of Illinois. They're getting out of New York. They're getting out of California, and they're moving to red states. And one of those main red states that is, economically prosperous more than any other is Texas. And the next one's Florida, and others like Tennessee, and even like really all across the South, whether it's, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. People are moving to red states because they have freedom and they have opportunity.
Yeah. We issued on this show, I was trying to offer solutions like a 6-point plan. I always wonder why Republicans haven't done that, something that's really clear as far as if you come here, a remittance tax where you can't be coming here, sending the money out. Companies need to be penalized if they're replacing an American simply for a lower wage where someone isn't necessarily more qualified. I'll tell you the reason young people have been really upset, when this came out in Elon Musk and people who they thought were on their side said, we need to uncap H-1Bs. And then Vivek, who's been right here in the studio, a very friendly guy, said, yeah, well, there just aren't enough Americans. There aren't enough, look at our educational systems. That's the problem. We don't buy it. We don't buy that Americans are too dumb to do these jobs that people are doing for 60, 70K a year.
Yeah, those jobs, there might be a few where we need some help.
A handful, sure.
Yeah, right, where we benefit from like a guy like Elon Musk coming to this country, right? We did benefit.
yeah, of course.
So we don't want to when we're talking about that kind of talent that can actually make all of us better off. But for the most part, I think we have that whole program is way beyond just doing that. And so somehow it needs to be more refined, more scaled back to make sure we're getting the Elon Musk of the world to benefit our country. But we don't want to replace regular American jobs with people that are just coming in to do it for less money.
Yeah, and I would tell you, it doesn't seem like it'd be that complicated of a problem to fix. It just requires someone stepping up to do it. And there's obviously a very strong contingency of big business groups who don't want to see that because they stand to benefit from it.
Well, they pay lower wages, right? I mean,
yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then their answer is, well, that's because you Americans are too dumb to do it. You go okay, this is the thing that young men have heard, right? When we used to talk about illegal immigration, people would say, well, who's gonna mow your lawn? Who's gonna pick your strawberries was the old thing. It's like, well, first off, that's racist. Second, now they're saying, yeah, well, we don't have enough smart Americans. So it's like, okay, so the low wage, or let's not say low wage, but the low skill manual labor jobs, well, those aren't for Americans. They would say Americans won't do it. That's not true. Now they go, the highly skilled jobs that people have trained for, they're not good enough to do. Well, you go, okay, so then what, an American who's gone through the system, an American who's done everything right, just has to pick it right in the middle there, a sweet spot? That doesn't seem very American.
No, it doesn't. I think the whole reason people love Trump is America first.
Right.
So I think we need to run it through that grid. There's nothing wrong with being America first. Every other country is, right? So why are we not? Why are we like, oh, yeah, we need to take all these other countries? And even when we passed in-state tuition for illegals, Rick Perry, that was one of his big promotions as governor. That was a Republican governor that passed it.
Right.
And I've tried to undo that the whole time I was in office.
Did you hear that? Someone didn't put his phone on silent. You can. That was to admonish yourself. You get to witness a real-time admonishment. Look, here, watch. He's going to admonish himself. Watch, do it. Take it.
I wasn't ready with the
Take it. Well, be ready when it's yourself. There you go.
It's not even very cool.
If we get something wrong on here, we admonish
It's
ourselves.
very
I like
cool,
that.
Rick.
I
We
like
make
that.
our references available. So if we misread a stat, it's the only show where that's the case.
But I had the opportunity. It took me. I couldn't undo it through the legislature. It was like the Republican legislature kept what Rick Perry put in place, and I worked at this situation where maybe the federal government sued me over it, and we've signed a consent decree, and it's gone. And the stroke of a pen, we got it undone. But this was, why are we giving in-state? This means that we are giving away UT, Texas A&M seats to illegals over people who are residents, and that was promoted and pushed through by a Republican governor.
Why? You're saying, well, but I don't have the answer. That's why you're here. I'm asking you.
I have business interests. It has to be. Why would Rick Perry do that? Other than there are businesses that promote that and want him to do that. Well, that's not right. If you're a taxpayer, you should have access to the educational system. So then that goes back to one of your points. Well, Americans aren't getting educated. Well, if you're giving away their seats,
right,
it's one of the top schools to illegals. They're not here legally.
I know.
And Rick Perry passes a bill that says, hey, that's a good thing. Let's give them more seats at our schools.
That's the thing with Texas. People are like, yeah, it's a red state, but there's always a little bit of funny business that has us go, I don't know if they're one of us. I don't know how there's that big of a disconnect between a policy like that from Rick Perry. There have been some with Abbott. I wouldn't say anywhere near as egregious, but spending a lot of time with people, with conservative voters, right-wing, conservative nationalists, whatever term you want to use, and then seeing the representatives, there is a disconnect that people see, and that's going to be changing generationally.
No, that is, there's this thing, it happens in politics. I watch it because I went down there and I was like, what happens to these people? And what happens is leadership controlled by their own, interests will come in and try to get you to vote the way they want you to vote. And they'll give you committee assignments, and they'll give you money. And there's a difference between real power and perceived power. Well, most people want to be viewed as powerful. So they want to be committee chairman. No one cares, but they do.
Right.
It feels like power because you're controlling legislation and you're getting money. Well, the reality is real power is keeping your vote. And very few people realize that the real power is not letting leadership grab your vote. Because once you're in those positions, guess what? You have to vote the way you're told.
Yeah, I would also say real power. Well, one time I saw a man rip 2 phone books in half simultaneously. That was pretty impressive. But speaking of real power, because we're gonna.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, I watched a man rip, and then he blew. He popped a hot water bottle with his lungs, and I said, "Well, it was a power team. It was the name. Yeah, they did it at churches."
Oh yeah, I've seen those guys.
It was pretty cool. We're going to continue here. If you guys are not members on Rumble Premium, because I actually have a video that came up, and I know that you've been at the center of this, the Epic Center there, going on this sort of obviously a hot button topic, Islam. But there's the president of the Wiley East High School Republicans who posted this video about an experience he had with Islam at his school that'll put a finer point on it.
I'm Marco. I'm the president of the High School Republicans at Wiley East High School. And today there was an organization called Why Islam that had a huge table booth in front of our school today, and they were giving hijabs to girls out throughout the high school, and they were giving out Qurans, and they also had pamphlets about Sharia law and other Islamic things, and they were giving out these bags. And I had a discussion with the women that were there, and we're trying to understand what's going on.
Was everybody in a hijab?
So they were passing out to as much, girls as they could. So that was their goal.
How many students took those bags?
I don't have an exact number of how many people took them, but I can say that they were trying to get as much out as they could.
And it was during the school day, right?
Yes, it was during lunch.
So let me ask you, what issues do you see that raising legally, culturally here in Texas? Obviously, the Epic Center is its own thing that's been a hot button topic.
Yeah, this is tricky. So because you've got constitutional rights, First Amendment rights, we're a free country, and the founders envisioned a place where both political expression and religious expression. Now, then you get into the whole complicated thing of government schools promoting. Are they promoting? Or are these individuals expressing their own religion? And so it gets really complicated when you're passing it out in schools, and then you got to go into the school and find out what are they allowing for other? Are they allowing Christians to do the same thing? Or are they just allowing Muslims? I'd have to know more facts about that situation, but it is concerning. Given that it was at a public school.
And what about the Epic Center? Like, what's the update on that? What's happening there? Because that obviously was pretty clear. It was encroachments there that people had a problem with.
Well, it's interesting because there are federal issues which I can't touch. Fair housing issues as to whether they're discriminating. I can't touch those. Those are completely within the purview of the Justice Department. I think they wash their hands of it. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I've been able to look at state issues. Are they falling? Obviously, we're First Amendment. You can worship however you want.
Of course.
Associate with whoever you want, but I was looking at what were they doing under state and federal law. Were they violating state laws? And so we believe they were violating state laws as it related to how these offers were made. They were deceptive in how they were made, and they were not appropriate. So we sued them and said, you are violating state and federal securities laws. So the whole thing with Muslim, they can do what they want there with their religion, but they still, the biggest challenge is Sharia law. Are they going to follow laws that are separate and distinct and different from our state, federal laws, and our Constitution? That is unacceptable, and that's where my main focus is. I'm a lawyer, and my job is to look at, are they following our laws, not are they following our religion, because we don't have religion. Anybody can worship however they want to.
Right, but can there be some kind of a differentiator? I mean, people say, "Oh, it's a litmus test." It's not if it's a question. As simple as, do you respect and will you honor and uphold constitutional laws, even in the face of the prescription of Sharia law? Like, it's the only religion that has that.
Absolutely. We should be looking at whether they're following our constitutional laws. They can't have a separate set of laws governing their community that are separate from our state laws, our federal laws. You have to operate within our legal system,
right,
and within the laws that were put in place by, first of all, the Constitution, the overall framework that we all look to. And then if you're not doing that, then there's a real problem with what you're doing.
Well, that's also the problem, too, is, believe me, Islamists, and I was raised in Canada where we had honor killings, we had all kinds of problems. They'll see the constitutional freedoms as a loophole because they go, well, we're free to practice, and obviously everyone is free to worship and practice their religion. But they go, once we get enough people, then it doesn't really matter anymore because we can get those people following the prescription. And that's what we see in places like Dearborn, and that's the concern, where you want to step in before it gets to that point, but constitutionally, people say, well, we can't really do that because it wouldn't be an infringement.
But unlike, Europe had the same problem. First of all, immigration, right?
Yeah.
Back to that
they
issue.
still have it. It's pretty crappy.
Yeah, and then second, if you're not going to stand up and say you can't have your own separate legal system, which is what is happening, then that's a real problem. We are going to lose our country. We are going to lose the freedoms. We're going to be controlled by separate law. That's a problem for me. And that's a problem for a lot of Americans. I think we have to say that, and we have to do it right. We can't. I want to focus on the law, not what their religion is. That's up to them.
The only problem that you run into is before you get to the actual practicing of the law, it can grow and they can take over a community, and then it becomes a bully pulpit. And then culturally people capitulate. And now you're a little too far gone. So that's the challenge.
We live in a free country, and the price of freedom. I forgot who said it, is eternal vigilance. We have to. Each generation has to say, no, we are going to defend this Constitution, or we are not going to be free. And we know that most countries are not free, whether they're Muslim, they're totalitarian, or whether they're anti-religious. Most countries are not free. We are, because we've defended it. If we do not defend it, we will lose it.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to control us.
Yes.
A lot of people want to control us, externally and internally, and they don't want the stupid people like us making our own decisions and controlling the government. They want a top-down approach. The vision of our founders was bottom-up, the people.
Speaking of the founders, I don't think they would have had a chip in their brain for this. I think the founders would have gone, wait, they're coming from countries that dole out a specific prescription to usurp the laws and have to subject. Well, of course, we're not going to allow anyone from those countries at any point unless they denounce it. Like, I think that's what they would have done. And now we go like, we're free to religious freedom. No, yeah, sure, but this is not the same as another religion.
I think we ought to have something in letting people in that they will say, no, I have my own religion, but I'm going to follow these laws, and I'm not going to follow separate laws.
Right.
You ought to have to agree to be under our Constitution. Otherwise, why are you coming here other than just to destroy it?
Yeah, I think if you were to issue that quote-unquote litmus test to all the imams across this country, you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked as to how many wouldn't be able to answer in a way that would be in line with American Constitution.
That's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah. And no one wants to do it because then they'll say, infringing on religious freedoms. If you were to ask them, hold on a second, should women have the right to A, B, C? What about gay American citizens, D, E, F? You'd be surprised that I would actually wager that a majority of them would say, well, of course not. And if they had the right with the laws, they would change them. And that's the challenge that we run into, because before it gets to them being a voting bloc where they can change the law, they get to that point where it's a bully pulpit. And guess what? The law is not really relevant in places like Dearborn. They self-govern. The reason there's so many missing children, for example, in Dearborn, Sterling Heights will surprise people, is because they follow their own Sharia courts where someone says, talik, talik, talik means divorce. The woman has no say. She doesn't get to see her kids again. That's an overcorrection from the custody problems we have here in the States, where family courts need to be corrected a little bit. But the law is not relevant. They practice their own law. And if you move in there and you're not one of them, guess what? You are kind of subject to their law, or you're drummed out of the core. And I've seen it happen in that state. And I really hope that we have a plan in place and people act as the vanguard against that in Texas.
Me too. We're trying. You act under your authority. We are doing the things we can do.
Right.
And everybody needs to do the things that they can do. And they need to speak out and not be afraid. I mean, we need to speak out and say, Sharia law has no place in governing us in this state. And if people are not willing to stand up and fight, we will lose our freedom, because that's an antithetical legal system to our Constitution.
Yeah, when I was in Michigan, to give you an idea how pervasive it was, my favorite restaurant in Michigan, turns out it was a front. They were funneling money to Hezbollah. And I was like, crap, I'll go to the other restaurant. I mean, I just love the garlic chicken. And then they also turned out to be a front, and they were funneling money to Hezbollah. And I was like, well, you know what? I guess at this point, everything else is closed and the terrorists have good food. God will forgive me. But that's how, like, literally my two favorite places. I think I took you to one of them.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yes, Gerald.
General, do you feel like you have enough tools to be able to fight this fight? Because I understand and I agree, like, we have to defend the Constitution, but it seems like you're kind of hanging your hat on, well, Sharia law. Well, before they get to Sharia law, do we need a little bit more power? Do we need a little bit more?
Yeah, I think we need to be creative. They're creative. We need to be creative in figuring out how, and this is a legislative issue. The legislature. My authority doesn't come because I just make it up. My authority comes because I have constitutional authority and I have statutory authority. And the legislature, no one contemplated this when our Constitution was put in place, and no one contemplated this 20 years ago. But now we need to have people thinking creatively. How do we give authority to the Attorney General and other branches, other elected officials to deal with this issue, whether it's local or at the state level?
Yeah.
But isn't that kind of part of the, I hate to say it, and I'm not saying that you're doing it, part of the problem when you have judges just going, no, we're just going to not enforce federal immigration law. I'm going to block it. And then people like you but I'm bound by this constitutional authority. They don't give a shit. How about you just consider not giving a shit?
I'm gonna give you the counter argument. If we adopt that position, then there is no Constitution, and then we have nothing. We have whoever's in power controls what the law is, because none of us believe in the Constitution anymore, and that is definitely where the left wants to take us, where it's all about power. The whole thing that I was taught at the University of Virginia, which was founded by Thomas Jefferson, who had a big part in that whole founding thing and the Declaration. My constitutional law professor tried to instill in us. The Constitution is not, we shouldn't be tied to what those founders who are all racist, what they thought 250 years ago. It's a living and breathing document where we can interpret it based on today's cultural norms and values. And so guess what? You know what that means? It doesn't mean anything. It means whatever these ruling oligarchy is judges, right? They get to decide. They're not elected. They're appointed, and they get to decide what our Constitution means. Don't worry about what it actually means. That means we have nothing. It's like.
But how do you fight that if we're bound by constraints that they are actively destroying?
The fight is you have to get your people elected. You have to get your people in these judicial positions. And if you lose the fight where the Constitution doesn't mean anything, it's like if you're a believer in Christianity, the Bible. If the liberal theologians say, it doesn't really mean anything, it doesn't mean that, we just did whatever we make up at the time. Well, then you don't have a religion. You don't have a foundational document that holds you to anything if you don't actually believe what's in there.
Right. Well, some of us read the new James Tallarico version.
Yeah, it's different
of the Bible. You were talking about that. So this guy, I would assume, has been on your radar a little bit.
He's a con man.
Okay.
He's a con man, and what's so sad, there's a script. I don't have the exact verse. Better for you to have a millstone tied around your neck and go to the bottom of the ocean, bottom of the water, than to mislead children, because that's what he's doing. He's misleading children and adults about what the Bible actually says, and it's so dangerous and so evil and pernicious. But he has a smile on his face. He looks like a nice guy. But what he is doing is truly bad.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if he looks like a Keebler elf. And that's just me, ad hominem. I'm childish. But no, that's worse. Someone putting on a team jersey and being a turncoat. Someone saying, no, I'm just like you. I'm a Christian. By the way, all the things that you think are in there, they're not in there. Take my word for it. And you have people who are dumb enough to go, that sounds sensible. Like he actually just said, actually abortion and same-sex relationships are not mentioned anywhere in the Bible. It's like, he either is lying or he's never read it.
Yeah. Well, so what's the most egregious kind of, you said, to lead a young child astray or children astray, what's the most egregious thing that he's doing that you think he's doing that?
Well, the things you just mentioned. I mean,
those two.
To say that, you can say I disagree with the Bible, but to say it's not addressed about killing human life and about same-sex relationships, it is addressed. You may disagree with it. You may want to take the liberal theology and say, well, that was cultural, blah, blah, blah. We don't, back to my constitutional argument.
Yeah.
But to just lie, I think he probably knows he's lying.
Oh, he's
He's weaseling his way out. So I did a video on same-sex relationships, and what their claim is that God is not I didn't.
It was
do
a home
the
video.
Sex relationship. It was give me,
And he too likes large mirrors.
one would never know that I'm the CEO of this company. So what they're doing is basically saying God never addressed, like these monogamous same-sex relationships. He's talking about other things, sex outside of marriage, and it's like, no, you're trying to like weasel your way in there. And thou shalt not commit murder, but that doesn't include somebody in the womb because of ancient Jewish tradition on abortion and things like that, and how the punishment would be dealt out. So I think he's just smarmy enough to try to get you to believe his version of theology. I don't think he's lying. I think it's more diabolical than that.
Well, isn't it funny when they talk about like welcoming the stranger? Usually they're quoting a verse in Leviticus, and it's like,
Yes.
yeah, but the verses in Leviticus about homosexuality are actually kind of the most harsh, to the point where we don't really even go to them. We go to Romans.
Yes.
So it's like, you want to go back to Leviticus? Like, just read the next chapter.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, it's not. It's not the way they want to go.
I think there's stones involved.
Yeah. I think if we went Leviticus, if that was our basis for law, Tallarico wouldn't be.
No.
And it would happen very quickly, which is not what anyone is at.
And I think it would hurt.
The Bible never
Yes,
mentions
it would be
sodomy.
very unpleasant. What was that?
The Bible never mentions sodomy.
No, it doesn't. That's
Left the Y off.
Yeah, no, it's just not even there. Yeah, and they're not ultra specific as to what it is. Let's take.
Yeah, it's like that. I don't want my kids reading.
Believe me, I had to, when I was volunteering with a youth group, the sex questions came up a whole lot, and there were a lot of sodomy questions. We were like, yeah, but I just want to be clear.
Yeah, but what did?
I had a kid who was like, because someone told me sodomy laws included like, guy, girl, and not but like things with the mouth. They were like, is that? If I get married, that's still okay, right? I'm like, it's fine. We're not talking about this.
You'll be okay.
Yeah,
Just
they're very curious.
Yeah.
Ask your mom.
One final one final question to go back on really quickly. So on the H-1B issue, so I believe didn't Governor Abbott put a pause on any new H-1B issues? So is there any state power there that he has to be able to do this?
Yeah, but it's only related to state agencies.
Okay.
And anything that he oversees in the state.
Okay, so it doesn't do anything with the federal, like you said.
No, it's like state agencies and universities, but
Okay.
he can't. He doesn't have the authority. Again,
Well, that helps with Texas A&M because they're one of the
yeah. There's no doubt.
College Station has the highest concentration.
Yeah.
And not that they're all in College Station, but it's the
Right.
highest concentration of where they're approved.
Well, and he doesn't directly control the board, but he appoints it. So you want to listen to him, or do you not? You're not going to get reappointed.
Yeah, if you want to be a
listen
board member.
Yeah, if you want to be a board member, you might want to pay attention to what the governor tells you.
Yeah.
Hey, you're not doing this anymore.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, you can click around and watch one of these videos on YouTube, or head on over to Rumble and subscribe, where I am live every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Live on Rumble. YouTube is dead. Rumble did it. And on Rumble, you can say